Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Want to thank our witnesses as well. This is something we've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is have a hearing on the origins of COVID-19. And so both the Select Subcommittee on Coronavirus, Republicans, as well as our ranking member on the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, are going to give opening statements. Then we have two witness panels that are going to be presenting evidence, and then we're going to have some Q&A sessions. We'll do at least one round, two rounds if necessary. And with that, I'll give my opening statement. 4 million people around the globe have died from COVID-19. 600,000 of those deaths are here in America. With every one of those deaths, there's still families and loved ones who are also mourning. The entire world has been turned upside down. Our children have lost a year of their livelihoods. Millions of those children lost an irreplaceable year of in-classroom learning. Governments have borrowed trillions of dollars responding to this pandemic. So we have a simple, basic question. How did COVID-19 start? What was the origin of COVID-19? We've asked that question for more than a year and requested that the House majority hold hearings to investigate the origins of COVID-19. Perplexingly, Speaker Pelosi has refused to allow a single hearing, calling it a diversion. As the American people will hear today from our expert witnesses, this is far from a diversion. The evidence continues mounting that this was a man-made disaster that started in the Wuhan lab. If that is the case, then it might be considered dramatically worse than Chernobyl. Today's witnesses will lay out two specific facts. One, the Chinese government engaged in a series of lies followed by a massive cover-up from the very start of COVID. And number two, the weight of evidence strongly points to the virus having emerged from the Wuhan lab. Let me start with the lie, and you will hear more from ranking members McCall and Nunes about this. On January 2nd, 2020, Dr. Fauci and CDC Director Dr. Redfield picked up from the Chinese Communist Party the first official lie. The CCP claimed in each of, at that point, 27 reported cases that the illness had jumped from an animal to a human. Both doctors, Fauci and Redfield, knew that was likely not true. We now know with overwhelming certainty that was in fact a lie. A year and a half later, there is not a single case of the virus having jumped from an animal to a human, yet the CCP claimed to know of 27 separate individual cases. The Chinese Communist Party was also covering up knowledge of human-to-human transmission. On January 7th, the CDC situational report included, quote, media has begun to report high demand of N95 respirators in China. Well, you don't need N95 respirators to protect against individual animal-to-human transmission. China knew the virus was spreading from humans to other humans. On January 4th of 2020, Dr. Redfield offered to send the CDC Epidemic Intelligence Service to Wuhan. Had China been open and transparent with the world, the pandemic could have been stopped right then and there. Instead, weeks later, China put people from Wuhan on international flights, spreading the disease globally. Throughout January of 2020, there were 20,000 people from China who were entering the United States daily, exponentially worse than Chernobyl. On January 6th, Dr. Redfield spoke with China's equivalent of their CDC and reported to the U.S. National Security Advisor that his, quote, call was both troubling and bizarre. China was stonewalling, he went on to say. Gao was not forthcoming at all. This was Dr. Redfield back in January of 2020. Redfield was concerned by Gao's tone, which was different from his previous experiences with him. Gao sounded like a hostage. On January 10th, the United States beginning work on a vaccine. Let me pause there for a moment because it shows a dramatic dichotomy between our two nations. In the critical first days, China was engaging in a massive cover-up, while allowing the virus to spread across the globe. And at the same time, the United States was beginning work on a life-saving vaccine. The story matters and is a display to the world of the two countries' characters, the morals and the values. By January 13th, Dr. Fauci concluded, quote, "Holy bleep, they haven't been telling us the truth." That was Dr. Fauci's quote in January of 2020. Why was China lying? Could it be the motive was to cover up a virus that had leaked from a lab conducting gain-of-function research on coronaviruses, meaning that manipulation in the lab had likely made the virus dramatically more dangerous to the world than a naturally occurring coronavirus? That might be a motive for a massive government cover-up. Our witnesses will discuss this further, but here is what we know today. 1. No intermediate host. The animal that the bat would be expected to infect that would then transmit the virus to humans has been found. After testing, by the way, hundreds of different species and thousands of specific animals, still haven't found that animal. 2. There is no evidence it was ever in the human community before the pandemic began, and yet, as Dr. Quay will be discussing, it had perfected human-to-human spread from the very beginning. That is the hallmark of a lab-created virus. And number 3, we know that the Wuhan lab was conducting potentially dangerous research on bat coronaviruses, and their ability to cause pandemics included gain-of-function research. As Admiral Giroir states, quote, "It's just too much of a coincidence that a worldwide pandemic caused by a novel bat coronavirus that cannot be found in nature started just a few miles away from a secretive laboratory doing potentially dangerous research on bat coronaviruses." We also know the first cases of COVID in China occurred sometime between mid-October to mid-November of 2019. This is when we now know that, according to the Wall Street Journal, 3 Wuhan lab workers sought hospital care for an unknown respiratory illness. COVID didn't start in late December in the wet markets. It started months earlier, and lab workers in the institute working on coronavirus were infected. And China began lying immediately and began buying up N95 respirators immediately. And they closed domestic travel, but continued sending 20,000 people a day to America. And now 600,000 Americans are dead and 4 million people worldwide. This is exponentially worse than Chernobyl. And yet, to this day, Speaker Pelosi has yet to have a single hearing on the origin of COVID-19. The very name of our committee is the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus. And yet, not a single hearing on the origin of the coronavirus. Well, that changes today. The American people will learn a lot today about what we know. The witnesses are respected, serious experts who have put time and research into learning more about the origins of COVID-19. But we should be having a bipartisan investigation that would include subpoena power to bring others in. NIH and Dr. Fauci should also testify about the history of NIH's involvement in gain of function. Speaker Pelosi should immediately take up the bill that passed unanimously out of the Senate that would declassify all intelligence related to the origins of COVID. Think about this. There is a bill that passed the Senate unanimously, all Republicans, all Democrats, to declassify some of the things we're trying to find out. Speaker Pelosi has yet to bring that up. We're calling on her to bring that up. It would pass this House overwhelmingly and get us more of those answers. So ultimately, today's hearing, we're going to be asking these questions, and we expect to get some answers, and we hope to continue pressing to get even more answers. With that, I'd like to yield to the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Coleman.